We need a new political party. The party of Americans, by Americans, of Americans, for Americans. It cannot include seditionists, traitors, cult worshippers, insurrectionists, authoritarians, provocateurs, cheats, hypocrites, advocates of civil war, or downright pandering wackos selling the soul of the republic for a few sound bites on ad-driven media and a few votes from the republic-bending obscenity that is gerrymandering, nor should it tolerate such choices. We have weathered wars on our shores. We have dealt with economic depressions. We've weathered pandemics. We have weathered a few demagogues, fascists, and traitors on the fringe. We have weathered isolationists, and we've weathered opposing views. Yet no nation can survive if it's allowed to rot from the inside out. We need a new political party. It cannot be a party of cowards. It must be a party of the brave and the intrepid and the valorous. It cannot be a party of bullies. It must be a party of compassionate and those who will call out bullying for what it is, cowardice. It must be a party that demands a better life for all Americans, which welcomes and encourages and fosters and demands diversity, one wherein its members openly and loudly eschew racism, xenophobia, misogyny, hatred, and divisiveness. It must be a party of servants, not an unruly mob of predators. It must be a party that doesn't define itself in contrast to other beliefs. Rather, it must be a party of values and inspirations that stand on their own. It must be a party that respects differences, rather than a dysfunctional gaggle that views anyone who disagrees as the enemy. It must be a party that requires government to be right-sized and fiscally accountable rather than bloated and wasteful and arrogant. And it must be a party that requires all elements of government to consistently demonstrate value added to the lives of Americans, a return on investment for every tax dollar it earns. It must be a party that is focused on creating an environment where private sector can create customers and jobs and a strong national and international economy. It must be a party that expects that people will get disproportionately rich, but inspires them to pay a disproportionate share of taxes because they are honored to focus on how blessed they are, not upon how elite they might believe themselves to be. It must be a party to serve all Americans, not just those who voted it into power. It must be a party which sees compromise as a strength rather than a weakness born of confused and toxic masculinity. It must be a party that acknowledges that we are a great people, but as a mere 4% of the world population, we're not the only people. It must be a party that recognizes that the stock market is a mere reflection of shareholder positioning, not a measure of the lives of the average citizen. It must be a party that requires shareholders of any corporation to demonstrate ethical corporate citizenship rather than raw greed and profit at any cost. It must be a party of facts, not a party of lies. It must be a party that recognizes the ancients of this continent and their legacies of wisdom, contributions to civilization, the law, and spirituality. It must be a party that is blind to the differences, rewarding only those of character and integrity and honesty. It must be a party that celebrates real heroes and heroines, the quiet ones, teachers, nurses, housekeepers, the bussers, dispatchers, maintenance folks, the person who picks up our garbage, dishwashers, cooks, taxi drivers, truck drivers, surveyors, dancers, artists, honest cops, the research assistant in the back room of the lab, the farm laborer, the logger, the single parent, the kid with the lemonade stand who donates the proceeds to charity, rather than arm wavers and narcissists and overly paid sports celebrities and shrill carny barkers who crave attention only for themselves. It must be a party that seeks to build up and cherish the citizenry, not punish them for imagined disloyalty or because they're poor or different or disadvantaged or have made poor life choices. There must be a party that serves the citizenry rather than believing it must control the citizenry. It must be a party that doesn't allow media to drive its narrative or determine its values or priorities. It must be a party that uses technology in an ethical, humane manner, rather than as a tool to manipulate information and vulnerable minds. It must be a party that relies upon science and one that reveres art. It must be a party that fosters independence rather than dysfunctional codependence. It must be one that demands respect for balance among and between the three branches of government, rather than allowing one or two to run roughshod over another. It must be a party where there are no backroom or under-the-table deals. It must be a party where there are no secrets and no surprises. It must be a party that requires that all Americans protect the vulnerable, the sick, the hungry, the disadvantaged, and the immigrant. It must be a party that seeks to help citizens become self-reliant and self-sufficient, rather than profiting from and taking pleasure in seeing a population mired in debt and hopelessness. It must be a party of our Constitution rather than one of magical failed theories of pseudo-theocracy. A party that knows when we focus upon our Constitution first, all religions will be just fine, and knows that the reverse is not true. It must be a party based upon confidence rather than hubris, upon compassion rather than fear. It must be a party that removes any and all obstacles to open, free elections. It must be a party that removes any and all obstacles to open, free elections. It must be a party that builds confidence in our fundamental institutions rather than undermining them at every turn. It must be a party focused upon making certain our citizens are healthy and safe and well fed. It must be a party that focuses upon the greater good and preserving individual rights rather than demonizing and regulating female reproductive systems. It must be a party where there is laughter and pets and joy and enthusiasm born of discovery. It must be a party that demands adherence to rules protecting the land, water, and air, and will not allow non-renewable resources to be harvested for profit when there are a myriad renewable alternatives. It must be a party focused upon embracing and celebrating positive values and ethics rather than seeking validity through diminishing, ridiculing, or demonizing others. It must be a party committed to an educated population, for therein alone lies the future strength of the Republic. Let us build this. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. John Lennon.